Buenas tardes. I'm the surprise in this segment. You may have noticed that everyone is under 18, but I am here to prove to you that 67 is the new 18. Yeah. It gives hope to us all, right? Alcatraz Island sits less than 2 kilometers from one of the most exquisite cities in the world. All right? San Francisco is a beautiful city. It's very picante, it's very quirky, it's liberal, it's framed on 2 sides by 2 beautiful bridges. It has a 360-degree view of the entire Bay Area. And less than 2 kilometers away is the most maximum security penitentiary in the United States in its day. About 280 men serve time on Alcatraz in any given year. That represents 1.5% of the entire federal prison population. And these were really, really bad guys, okay? They were murderers, they were kidnappers, they were guys who robbed banks with guns, they were predators. And they had wound their way by their behavior to the most maximum security prison in the country. And I moved on to Alcatraz when I was 7 years old. Did that work? Oh, that's me in the hat. That's what I like to refer to as my the usual suspects. My father worked on Alcatraz, and we moved there when I was 7. Now, people have always said to me, you know, wasn't it scary? I mean, weren't you afraid? I mean, one woman said to me, didn't you live your life in fear? And people would ask if I, was I mad at my parents because they made me live on Alcatraz? Well, let me tell you, it was a fabulous place to live, okay? There were 60 families on Alcatraz, about 75 children. Most people do not realize this. And every school day, we got on a boat and rowed across the bay to go to schools in San Francisco. We could bring our friends over to Alcatraz. So rather than it being a scary place, it was a low-crime neighborhood, right? Kind of, and that's important in the United States. You know, what we call, the ultimate in gated communities. And I lived there twice when I was this age and also when I was 15. And very, very normal existence. I got my first kiss on Alcatraz when I was 15. And this may be a side joke or an insider joke, but I may not have been the only person that got his first kiss on Alcatraz. Let me see if I can go back. Oh, there's another lovely picture. So you can see that there were a lot of kids that lived on the island. But that wasn't the dangerous thing. The dangerous thing were the men who grew up to become people who were sentenced to the most maximum security prison. And those men were from families marked by abuse, abandonment, addiction, mental illness, and personality disorders. And I want to give you an example of what that would be like. All of you all are, the elite, not because you're wealthy, but because you're well educated and you can choose what you do in your life. And you have choices to maneuver. But I'm going to take away all your postgraduate degrees. You now no longer have a postgraduate degree. You now no longer have a university degree. I'm going to take that away from you. You now no longer have escuela. I knew I would forget this. Escuela. Yes, thank you. You no longer have your secondary degrees. You quit school when you were 9 years old. And the reason why you quit school at age 9 is because your mother died when you were 6. And it was really hard to concentrate. And you kind of lacked focus. And you couldn't study and you fell behind in school. Now, if you were 9 years old, if you were your age now, but you were only educated to 9, would you have the same aspirations that you have now? Would you be married to the same spouse? Would you have the same goals? Probably not. You would be a very, very different person. Now, because your father was an alcoholic and sometimes in jail, you had to fend for yourself. And these were the types of men who came to Alcatraz. Now, yesterday you learned that about 30% of the prisoners in the United States are mentally ill. But I would argue that on Alcatraz, that number was about 35 or 40%. And here you are, educated to age 9, and you have wound your way through crime into various prisons, many of whom were much worse than Alcatraz. And you have finally, after 20 years, gotten yourself to Alcatraz. And here's the dangerous thing. You have to avoid those 40% that are mentally ill. And your life shrinks to 1 or 2 friends. And you know what? Here's the amazing thing. There were people on Alcatraz with just this same history. 20 years in prison, 30 years in prison, and now they're at the most maximum security penitentiary in the country, and they turned their lives around. I can probably name 20 people, and there are many more than that, who turned their lives around on Alcatraz. And it's just amazing. Jim Quillen, who's dead now, his mother tried to kill the entire family when he was 8. He spent 20 years in prison, 10 years on Alcatraz. He started serving Mass, and he worked with the priest, and he reunited with his family, and he got out of prison, and he never went back. Bob Luke, one of my favorite stories. Bob Luke was sitting on the balcony of the prison yard, and he got the smell of freshly cut grass. Somebody was mowing the grass near him, and he got that wonderful fresh smell. And he thought to himself, you know what? I'd like to have that smell again. And that was the moment that he turned his life around. And he got out of prison in the 50s. And he's been married all these years. So you know where I'm going. We all have bad times in our lives. People die, our spouses die, sometimes your children die, you lose a job, you drink too much and you hit somebody with a car. We all have these moments, and you know what? Sometimes people never recover, and it's their own private Alcatraz. And I'm here to tell you, just like I survived Alcatraz, that no matter what happens, if these men can wander into the most maximum security prison and turn their lives around, so can you. And when you do that, you change the world. Thank you.